The word discriminate and discern come from the same root word. It means to cut away. And when we do the call process, we give a variety of names to congregations. And guess what? You discriminate, you discern as you go down through those lists of names. You say no to all kinds of people for all kinds of reasons, right? Because they're too old or too young, have too much experience, don't have enough experience, because they're a man, because they're a woman, because they're too tall, which is not a good one, by the way, I'm saying. But congregations discriminate. I've now been your bishop for almost 2.5 years. Every church that we have worked in since I've taken this job on, this call on, the congregation has said, we either want this kind of person, or the flip, we don't want this kind of person. Every place that I've been. So we can discriminate. We can ask pastors, rostered leaders, what is your sexual orientation? How are the relationships in your life working? Have you been convicted of bank robbery? All those kind of things. Well, you can ask anybody that, but you can, in fact, discriminate against rostered leaders. And you have a right to do that. It's called the First Amendment. Now, the only way that can be taken away from us is if we modify the Bill of Rights, and the last time I checked, it finally takes a 2/3 vote of the states of the United States. Now, there isn't any kind of bill in the process of working its way through. So at least during my lifetime, I'm not too worried about that. All right, you understand that? Now, if you don't believe me, I shouldn't do that because this is on TV. Let's just say I know most of the Supreme Court. Actually, they're really good friends of mine. And if you don't believe me, I'd be happy to put you in touch with them. How'd that be? All right. Let's see. We've had some concern about our African companions synods and our African communities. We've had some information that has gone out that we as the church are holding our money over their heads, that we're threatening them with the stopping of our grants to them. And you need to know that's not true. What is true is this. When I arrived in Africa on November 21st, when I got off the airplane, we were greeted with the news that the fourth quarter grant from the ELCA would not be coming. Well, as you might well imagine, that's pretty big news, but they actually have pretty decent cell phone and email service over there, and within a couple of hours, I found out that no one had been threatened, but that at the middle of November, there simply was not enough money to send the grant. There was not money in the bank to be able to write those checks that needed to go out to our companion synods. Now, we have a companion relationship with Nicaragua, and we have a companion synod relationship with Cameroon. They use our grants differently throughout the year. 2 of them get used for infrastructure, and 2 of them get used for salaries programs. The second quarter and the fourth quarter grants go for salaries and programs. So what that means, for 2 places in Cameroon, at the Bible school and at the seminary, our grant pays for those teachers' salaries, and it also pays for some food for the Bible school students. They're young married people, most of them are in their early 20s, and they don't have the wherewithal to necessarily always feed themselves, so there is a little bit of a stipend that goes to the Bible school students so that they can put food on the table. When they had gotten the word that the money would not be coming, the Bible school sent its students home, and the teachers left. Our first place to go when we got there was the seminary, and as you might well imagine, they were pretty nervous and concerned, because it meant not that they were going to get 3 months of salary, that they would not get 6 months of salary, because that fourth quarter grant pays for half their year. So within a few short days, we were able to communicate back with Chicago. Additional funds came in around Thanksgiving time while we were there, and they were able to tell me so I could tell them that 60% of the grant would be coming. Now, while I was in Chicago, just as I was leaving, we were given the news that the rest of the money would be sent. So they will be fully funded. But you need to know that if congregations continue to withhold funds, for sure that grant will be cut, which it has not been. So my concern is not only for our synod and for Churchwide, it is for those recipients at the far end of the church. We have ability to adapt. Tomorrow I'm going to have to let my first staff person go because of shortfalls in mission support in the South Dakota Synod. We can adapt. We have some ability to maneuver. We can move things around. We can do a little bit less, but mostly we can keep working at about the same level that we have been. That is mostly true for Churchwide, although they now have experienced having to let go about 60 people, 20 in the first part of the year because of the recession, and 40 now in the fall because of response, mostly I think response to the vote. Those 60 people didn't have a vote in Minneapolis. But again, the church in the United States has some capacity. But I want you to understand that that church that we're in partnership with in Africa has capacity for the here and now within its congregations, within its leadership, because there's monies. But there are places where they have chosen to use our funds to make their church better, primarily at the seminary. That seminary is one of the best in Africa. Students not only come from Cameroon, but throughout Western and Central Africa to that institution. They prepare pastors for about 4 different countries right now. But their entire faculty is paid by us. And they don't have any room to maneuver. So will it kill the church? No. But it will stop the flow of seminary students, which, at least from where I sit, is a huge problem. While we were there, it was my 3rd trip, and we went to the hospital, which is one of the finest hospitals in Western Africa. We were able to travel throughout the hospital because we were with the director, and a great improvement over even my time 2 years ago. But while we were there, a woman was being operated on, and while we were there in that hospital, they experienced a brownout. We knew that because the lights in the room that we were in almost went out, but they didn't go all the way out. So if they'd had a blackout, the generator would have kicked in, but it was just a brownout. And so what happened to the instruments that were keeping that woman alive is they burnt up because there wasn't enough electricity to make them work right. And because of that, she died. Now, we had all kinds of conversations about what was going to be done in that hospital, and the one thing that had not been looked at to the nth was bringing in a dedicated line. So when I came back, had conversations with St. Mary's Hospital in Duluth, had conversation with some leadership folks here in South Dakota. We put out a request that we needed to raise, well, first 14,000 and then 2 more, so we got to 16, so that we could help bring in a dedicated line into that hospital. You responded wonderfully. We raised $18,000 in less than 2 weeks. That money is already in Africa. The engineer and doctor that will oversee the construction is already working on that project. I think by at least the middle of February, there will be a dedicated line along with batteries to protect the X-ray and the surgical suites so that that doesn't happen